All right. It's my pleasure to have with us today Dr. Rebecca Finley, who is the founding dean and professor at Jefferson School of Pharmacy at the Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. She's recognized as a pharmacy leader, noted for her contributions to oncology pharmacy practice. She's the recipient of the ASHP's Harvey Whitney Lecture Award and is a past president of ASHP as well. So welcome, Dr. Finley.
Thank you.
So we'll start off with, we'd like to learn more about your journey in your career as you've developed as a leader. And when you reflect on that, you may wish to include key events or people or persons who influenced you in your journey.
Okay, well, my journey's been a long journey. I'm about, I guess, 43 or 44 years into my career. So it's kind of a long story, and it's taken some twists along the line. As you mentioned, I started my career as an oncology clinical pharmacist, and in an era where oncology was just emerging, the use of chemotherapy drugs was just emerging, and I think when I went to pharmacy school, there were like 10 cancer drugs on the market back then. Had an opportunity to get involved early, and then my first job that I accepted out of my residency program, which was just back then a general hospital pharmacy residency, was actually with the National Cancer Institute as a contract employee clinical pharmacist at what was then called the Baltimore Cancer Research Center. It no longer exists. But anyway, I had a great opportunity, great mentors there to really start to, and it was really one where I believe was the birthplace of oncology pharmacy when you looked at what the pharmacists were doing back then in the mid-1970s. I did that for about 20 years, and during the course of that 20 years, my position at some point in time became partially funded by the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. All through, I always had students with me. I did teach some didactic classes, but probably about 10 years into my career, I started to become responsible for some of the coursework at School of Pharmacy. And but I think that if I have to look at the pivotal point, and people that knew me early in my career when I first started out, is that when again, this is back before the days of all PharmD, every one of my classmates at the University of Cincinnati, and I do credit a lot of folks that were there at the time, I had the great privilege to have at least a few years with people like Gloria and Don Franke and folks like that, Alex Berman, and a number of then pharmacy leaders and people that really did. And Harvey Whitney Jr. was my mentor in pharmacy school. So lots of people that really influenced me, but back in those days, most people that got out of PharmD programs went straight to academia and taught, and some of my classmates would still tell you that I said, I'm never going to be a teacher. I have no interest in academia. And here I am, probably am ending my career in the next few years as a dean of a college of pharmacy. So number one thing is that, you know, things change, you pivot to different things, you're prepared for those things. But I think that some of the things that have really been influenced my career have been, first of all, I was real fortunate in my first job to have supervisors, bosses that really valued volunteerism and encouraged our involvement in the Professional Pharmacy Association, especially our state chapter of the Maryland Society of Health System Pharmacists, or hospital pharmacists back then. And immediately, and I think this was even really cultivated during my residency at the University of Cincinnati, because I think then my residency preceptor was on the ASHP board at that time, Bob Williams. And so I think that, you know, that volunteerism, and I do stress volunteerism because I think that if I look at many of the values of what I've learned throughout my career, it's been those things that I've volunteered to do and not got paid to do that have been most valuable to my career. And I think that a lot of my peers would say the same thing. You get to know people beyond those that you work with every day. You get fresh ideas all the time. You can work together on whether it's, you know, legislative issues or practice standards, or I think how many through my volunteer work on both ASHP councils, then as a board member for ASHP, and then as a presidential officer. How many really pivotal things that you've had influence on. And so I think the volunteerism and that collaboration and learning to, you know, align yourself with mentors and listen to what everybody's got to say, because, you know, it's really broadens your perspective. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I always try to talk to students about, is that how important it is for each one of us as pharmacists to be involved in one of our professional associations. You don't have to join them all. You don't have to belong to them all, but you need to do more than just pay your dues. You need to get engaged and such, because that is, when you look at it collectively, all the major progress we've made in advancing the roles of pharmacists and things have happened because of our professional association. So to me, I'm a huge advocate and always have been. And the other thing is that don't be afraid to look beyond your horizon, because, as I said, I was a clinical pharmacist. I was never going to be in academia, and here I am, a dean of a college of pharmacy. So several times throughout my career, I made the decision as I finished my year as ASHP president that I'd been a clinical oncology pharmacist then for a little over 20 years. I knew it was time to do something different, and I looked at all kinds of positions. And I settled to, I didn't settle, I had the great opportunity to go to the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy as the chair of the Department of Pharmacy Practice there. So I went from a part-time faculty clinical pharmacist to a department chair. And again, that I think engaged my career firmly in academic pharmacy. And from there, I actually did take a sabbatical from academia for a couple of years and worked in industry for a couple of years, and then had the incredible opportunity to go found a new school of pharmacy at Thomas Jefferson University, which is also home of the oldest accredited pharmacy residency program. And so when you look at the number of pharmacy, especially hospital pharmacy leaders that come through Jefferson, we have a really, even though we're a relatively new school of pharmacy, we have a really strong pharmacy legacy there. And, you know, we've built our program collaborating with the Jefferson Health pharmacists, which has really, I think, enriched our program.
Very good. Very good. Thank you for that. Now, the next question has to do with your legacy in 20 years. And I rephrase this, everyone chuckles on legacy because, you know, but reflect on what are you most proud of in terms of your contributions that has helped advance the pharmacy profession?
Well, you know, I can answer this question, I guess, a couple different ways. This number one, I mean, you know, I'm not sure what you mean by legacy, but, you know, I don't think that I've changed the world. But what I'm most proud of what I've done is, number one, the patients that I took care of for 20 years and had a lot of role in developing some of the now effective antiemetics, and did a lot of work in pain management of cancer pain, served on the first national guideline panel through HRQ for the cancer pain guidelines. I was one of only 2 pharmacists involved in that. And those things, I mean, it just, you know, I do think, and I hated to kind of leave oncology pharmacy. I'm not really engaged in that world at all anymore. But so I think that's what I'm proud of. I think, again, I was at the leadership, but I do think that during my years as an oncology pharmacist, I was on the committee that wrote the first accreditation standards for an oncology residency standards. I chaired the committee that developed the oncology petition as oncology for the oncology specialty. And that was, you know, worked with 3 other outstanding individuals and really developing most of that. I served as the first chair of the Oncology Specialty Council under the Board of Pharmacy Specialties, and then went on to serve 2 terms on the BPS board, the Board of Pharmacy Specialties, and chaired that group for 2 years as well too. On the ASHP side, I was elected president the year of a very, very pivotal year for ASHP. ASHP's long-term CEO, Dr. Joseph Otis, was retiring. He'd been the CEO for 37 years. And the search and recruitment process to bring in our second CEO, Dr. Henry Manassi, fell on my watch. And so I'm real proud of how our board worked together, along with a lot of membership and such, to transition the ASHP staff through what was really a big change. So those things I think probably, again, legacy, I think that, I've had so many hundreds of or thousands of students over the years, and I'm really proud of what so many of them do. And this last couple of years at Jefferson, I've had the privilege of having, I think, 4 or 5 of my former students' kids in pharmacy school at Jefferson. So that's been a really special. And again, none of them were from the Philadelphia area, but they were persuaded to come to Jefferson by their parents because of my affiliation. So that's really special.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for that. So what advice do you have for students in their professional journey, as they become leaders to help advance the profession?
Well, I'm always full of advice, but I think the most important thing I can say to any student pharmacist is get engaged in the professional associations, understand the importance of that, understand that that's part of your professional responsibility to put in some volunteer work. And that needs to start at the local and the state level. I mean, the local and state chapters, many of them are desperate for leadership. It's really important. You can really cut your teeth there and learn a lot of good leadership skills. You'll find some mentors there and such. But I do think that that's important. The other thing that I learned is, you start out your career with a kind of your career goals and your plan for your future, but broaden your horizons. You may do like I did, turn completely around and do something different. And there's nothing wrong with that. When you look at many of what I look at leaders across the country in pharmacy, many of them have done that. And I think that we have a great profession in that we come out of pharmacy training with, in many ways, a broader training than many of the other health professions, because we include things like management courses and business, as along with the clinical skills, and we probably go deeper into some of the science than even some of the medical schools do now. So value that education that you get and capitalize on it, because there's just so many things when you think about how we all have incorporated population health into our curricula and things like that. It's a really valuable education and training, and just don't be afraid to change course if you desire to, and remember that it takes time. Be patient. You don't have to accomplish everything in the first 10 years out of school. And I think that that's some people, I see a lot of our overachievers come out and, if they're not, president of the state society of, whatever, in 2 years, or a director of pharmacy, they feel like they've been defeated. But, our careers are over 40 years. I'm testimony to that. I guess Terry is too. We've known each other a long time.
Right.
So, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You don't have to reach all your professional goals. And I think one of the other pieces is that I didn't recognize early in my career, and I'm very sincerely say this, is you've got to keep balance in your life. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I would probably not be working 80 hours a week, maybe that first 10 years out of school, maybe 65. But that balance in your life, and value your friends, your family, and such. And there's plenty of time to get all these things accomplished, because again, you're looking at a career that's 45 years long or something, and there's just time to do so many different things.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those words. And thank you for reminding me how long I've been in this profession.
We've been kind of, our careers have kind of been parallel for a long time.
For a long time, yes. So my last question, since this is going to be incorporated in a history and pharmacy leadership course, One of the things as we study the decades of the 2020s, one of the key events in that decade will be the COVID-19 pandemic. Like other key events in our history of our profession, events that occur outside of our profession shapes our profession. So how do you see COVID-19 pandemic shaping our profession and being an opportunity for our profession?
Well, I think that clearly, and I've been really, really proud of how the pharmacy profession has kind of risen to the occasion with COVID. When you look at the leadership of all of our national pharmacy associations, but also, you know, those pharmacy heroes out there, they've kept the community pharmacies open. The hospital pharmacies have been dealing with some incredible issues in terms of drug shortages, which has just been accentuated by COVID-19. I think that we really demonstrated the ability, and also I think people gained a strong appreciation for the role that pharmacists can play in population health, public health, and such. And what I see here locally, and I think it's true across the nation, is, you know, the role that pharmacists can play in reducing the health disparities and the inequities of care out there. So I think that I really do think that's going to be an important piece to catalog in our professional career. And, you know, just yesterday, I got an email from the director of the hospice and palliative care at Jefferson. And keep in mind, we are a large healthcare organization. We have 14 hospitals and over 30,000 employees and healthcare professionals just in our health system branch, not to mention the 2 universities that we have. But the chief, the director of the palliative care, and again, this may have more to do with the other outrageous, that's the wrong word, the terrible situation as a country we're dealing with right now in terms of cultural competency, racial bias and such. But I got an incredible email that came in yesterday morning that I didn't read until 9 o'clock last night, telling me the story of one of our pharmacy students, where Saturday, the city of Philadelphia, Center City, was frozen because of the protests ongoing. All the streets were blocked and such. And that there was a home hospice patient that was 33 years old, young children at home, was dying, they ran out of pain meds, and one of our pharmacy students got the meds, who was working then on a Saturday in one of our outpatient pharmacies at the hospital, and went something like 6 miles on foot to get these meds to the patient's home. Going through some of the protests and the looting areas and stuff that you saw on the national TV, and he got there. And and how grateful the family was. The young man, I call him a young man, he was 33 years old, passed away on Tuesday, but he was comfortable. So again, those kind of things, and that's been highlighted across our health system today, the actions of this young man. In fact, the provost called me this morning. So those kind of things that the pharmacist, you know, we are a compassionate, empathetic profession, and that combined with, you know, our strong desire to optimize drug therapy and ensure access to everybody, I do think that I think we will be recognized. And I've been really encouraged by some of the lay press. I mean, I know the Today Show did a little segment on pharmacy heroes early on in the COVID, and I've just seen a lot of nice things that have happened, even in our city, with the amount of pharmacies that were looted and shut down that I've seen on the local news, where, you know, pharmacies have been trying to provide information if their store had to close, where patients can go to get their prescriptions filled, and how they're trying to close the gaps and stuff. So I think that's a real important piece of our legacy.
Very good. Thank you very much for those stories and your insight. I really appreciate it, Dr. Finley. It's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, and I appreciate the opportunity. Best wishes to everybody.
Thank you.